Hi, I'm Hazel. This channel is Reflect. It's where we talk about books and philosophy and art and life. And today we're going to be talking about this book. It's called Of Human Bondage by William Somerset Maugham. So I made a video, the one before this, which was part 1. This is going to be part 2. So again, this is not a book review. It's more like me talking about these questions that this book raises. So floppy in terms of art and life and this protagonist who's going through it, and he's experiencing all his first heartbreak, first humiliations, first loves. And I won't go too much into the story, but I will be talking about this story in terms of this particular point where Philip, our protagonist, is in the book. And he is at a point now, just very quickly, the backdrop is that he is in Paris and he had come here for studying art to be a painter, but now he's considering leaving Paris because he doesn't think he made the best decision, and he doesn't think that he is cut out to be a painter. He would rather just live the life and live the art instead of expressing it. So in this book, I'm going to talk about this conversation which Philip has with a character named Cronshaw about the meaning of life and the purpose of life. And so I want to start with that conversation that Philip has with Cronshaw, and I want to talk about how that question also is something that we all face as artists, and what is the sort of solution to that, and how do we battle with that. Okay, so starting off, Cronshaw sort of tells Philip that man will do every action of his in order to seek pleasure. And so then Philip kind of reels against this, and he's like, that is so ugly, because if you take away beauty and goodness and duty, then what is the point of life, right? What's the point of living? And so then Cronshaw doesn't give him the answer, but he gives him this sort of hint, and we then see Philip in later stages throughout this book trying to find the solution through that hint and try to figure out what his meaning is of life. So the first major incident that happens after this conversation with Cronshaw is when Philip is hanging out with his buddy Lawson and Lawson's girlfriend. And so Philip is kind of jealous of Lawson, and he's thinking that, oh, I wish I had like a girlfriend, and I wish I wasn't alone. But then later on, he is with Lawson and Lawson's girlfriend again, and he looks at his girlfriend and he finds her revolting and he finds her ugly, and he thinks, I don't actually want to be with her. So this is a quote that I want to read out. He could not understand himself. Would he always love only in absence, and be prevented from enjoying anything when he had the chance by that deformity of vision which seemed to exaggerate the revolting? So I feel like this quote is not just talking about Philip's romantic situation, but it's also talking about the same conversation that he had with Cronshaw, which is that you're always seeking and you're always striving towards something. But when you get that thing, and when you look at it squarely in the face, or when you've experienced that joy, you don't find it as exciting or as rewarding as you thought you would. So like one way to think of this is obviously like it's sad, right, that we can never be content with something, and we're always like looking for the next thing, and then when we get that, we're not happy. Another way to look at it is that it's really beautiful that we always keep striving, and we're always looking for the next thing, the next endeavor, or the next challenge. And in one way, it is sad because we're not able to appreciate what we have, and we're not able to find peace with it. And if we keep striving and we keep just always moving from one thing to the other, we'll never get to appreciate everything we've got. But there's this other quote I wanted to read, which is when Philip is basically, he is at a dance hall and he's watching a group of people dance. This is also after his conversation with Cronshaw. And so he's watching these group of people dance, and he thinks that it's so pointless, that we're not going anywhere, and even when we're there, we're not satisfied, and we have all of these questions that we never get the answers to. So I'll read this out. It was a sordid scene. Philip leaned over the rail, staring down, and he ceased to hear the music. They danced furiously. They danced round the room slowly, talking very little, with all their attention given to the dance. The room was hot, and their faces shone with sweat. It seemed to Philip that they had thrown off the guard which people wear on their expression, the homage to convention, and he saw them now as they really were. In that moment of abandon, they were strangely animal. Some were foxy, and some were wolf-like, and others had the long, foolish face of sheep. Their skins were sallow from the unhealthy life they led and the poor food they ate. Their features were blunted by mean interests, and their little eyes were shifty and cunning. There was nothing of nobility in their bearing, and you felt that for all of them, life was a long succession of petty concerns and sordid thoughts. The air was heavy with the musty smell of humanity, but they danced furiously, as though impelled by some strange power within them, and it seemed to Philip that they were driven forward by a rage for enjoyment. They were seeking desperately to escape from a world of horror. The desire for pleasure, which Cronshaw said was the only motive of human action, urged them blindly on, and the very vehemence of this desire seemed to rob it of all pleasure. They were hurried on by a great wind, helplessly. They knew not why, and they knew not whither. Fate seemed to tower above them, and they danced as though everlasting darkness were beneath their feet. The silence was vaguely alarming. It was as if life terrified them, and robbed them of power of speech, so that the shriek which was in their hearts died at their throats. Their eyes were haggard and grim, and notwithstanding the beastly lust that disfigured them, and the meanness of their faces, and the cruelty, notwithstanding the stupidness which was worst of all, the anguish of those fixed eyes made all that crowd terrible and pathetic. Philip loathed them, and yet his heart ached with the infinite pity which filled him. He took his coat from the cloakroom and went out into the bitter coldness of the night. It's not just because the quote is that good, it's also because I have a slight itch in my throat. I mean, it's just, I think this is the point in the novel when Philip is, like, it fully hits him, like, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be in Paris because I've lived the life, I've lived, like, the artist's life, I've attended the art school, I've realized I'm not that good at my art, I've seen other people who are good at their art and they are also struggling, and they also, some of them regret going forward with their art, and they wish they could have all those time and all those years back. And now he's at this dance hall and he's watching all of these people dance, and he's realizing that they are also going nowhere, and that rage for enjoyment, like, we want pleasure so bad, and every time we get it, it's not enough. And even when you're there, even when you're right there in that moment experiencing the reward, the enjoyment, the entertainment, you are aware of the fact that you're very conscious of the fact that this is not as good as I thought it would be. And it's sad, the whole thing is sad. And so there's this other thought, this other quote that I want to read out to you, which is not from the book. This is something I wrote to a friend a few weeks ago. Okay, so I'm going to read this out. This is my laptop, by the way, which is what I'm looking at when I'm looking here. Can you see it? Yeah, you can see it. Okay. I don't know why I felt like I had to show that to you as proof. Anyway, okay, I'm going to read it out. Increasingly, I seem to be asking myself questions like, is this it? Is this the feeling I am supposed to be feeling? After doing something that should bring me joy, like cooking or having a good day at work, or realizing that I am doing well in a general sense. I work for money, I work on projects, I meet friends. These are supposed to be good things, and they are things that I'm doing for me, so they are supposed to feel good. But when it comes to the feeling, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to be feeling, so I keep asking myself, the world, something, if I'm feeling the right way, the right thing. Then suddenly something else will happen to me, some realization, some thought, and I'll be overcome with the need to share sudden positive, joyous feelings. Peace, contentment, excitement, wonder with the people around me. Which is really good for those moments, but then the rest of the moments are confusing, because in totality, I think all of this is good. One is supposed to have these mixed feelings. But this increase in wondering what I'm looking for, or not being content or excited enough with what I currently have, asking what more is there. Does this mean this will always be there? Will I never be completely happy or content? Will I never be completely sure I'm going in the right direction? How will I even know if I'm headed the right way? When will I be fulfilled? Wow, dramatic. Can you tell I was a spoken word poet? Anyway, I think that this is like a very human, very universal thought, right? So the other thing is that I sent this to my friend on 22nd June. Today is 13th July, and I don't feel like this at all. I want this time back, because at this moment everything was going right, and now it feels like in every area of my life something or the other is lacking. So that's the other thing, that like when you have something to strive for and when you're seeking for pleasure, then you still have something to look forward to, right? But it's still like you don't wish you were here. And then when you reach those stages in those different areas of your life, then it's like, okay, but is this it? Is this how I'm supposed to be feeling? Because it doesn't feel that good. And so it's like the solution is actually to be in the moment and live in the moment, and not keep looking for like the other side of the grass. How do you say that? Just like, you get what I mean, right? Yeah, the grass is always green on the other side, so okay, not keep looking at the other side of the grass, or just be in the moment. Anyway, so like this is illustrated perfectly by the next phase in Philip's life, which is where he has this thought. Okay, he has this beautiful thought. This video is mostly just quotes because the quotes are so good. But yeah, no, the point of that text also is that I think life is supposed to be these waves, and I'm just now realizing that my friend and I have this term called the waves. And so like whenever like he'll ask me like how you're doing, or I'll ask him like how you're doing, and if either of us say the waves are happening right now, the other one of us will just assume like, okay, it's a bad time. But we never use that term, the waves, for the times which are really good, which are also the waves. Because what I'm trying to say is that like the good will happen and the bad will happen and the neutral will happen, and all of this are waves, and it's never gonna be like calm and stable. And if it was, then you would just be bored with that. So that's a good thing. But the waves are fleeting, like the happy waves are also fleeting. But I think that each time something bad happens, we're so surprised and shocked. Like, okay, something bad happened again. But like the more you accept that like the low waves will also keep happening, the more like the better you'll be able to deal with them, I think is what I'm saying. Because yeah, there's this other thing that I wanted to say. There's this video I saw by this YouTuber called Mr. Clark's, like his handle is Mr. Clark's Classroom. The video is great, so I'll link it in the description. But he basically says that psychological maturity is about realizing that you are more than the ambivalent and anxious thoughts. That means the thoughts you have, which are like anxiety related, or like I'm not doing good enough, or ambivalent or ambiguous in the sense of like there's uncertainty and you don't know what path you're on. So psychological maturity is about realizing that you are more than those thoughts, not fusing yourself to those thoughts, and facing them as they occur and working with them. Yeah, I think just acceptance of the fact that these waves will always go up and down, that acceptance, and giving yourself the tools to deal with the low waves, and not fusing yourself to those anxious thoughts or to those ambiguous thoughts, and just knowing that you are more than them, and you will be able to keep working on what you're working on, whether those thoughts are there or not. That can give you a lot of strength, I feel. Yeah, so Philip has had the dance hall experience, and then a few pages later, this is the thought that he has. Of late, Philip had been captivated by an idea that since one had only one life, it was important to make a success of it. But he did not count success by the acquiring of money or the achieving of fame. He did not quite know yet what he meant by it. Perhaps variety of experience and the making the most of his abilities. Which I feel is a very, such a cute sparrow. No, that's not a sparrow. It's like a very large sparrow. I think these two metrics that Philip comes up with, right, which is having a variety of experiences and making the most of your abilities, are so important. And if you don't have like a clear philosophy of what is the meaning of life, or you're worried about where you're heading and you're not seeing any tangible rewards yet, and you're just anxious, or you're not comfortable with the uncertainty in your life right now, you can just have these two metrics that Philip has had, just borrow them, steal them. One is a variety of experiences, and the other is making the most of your abilities. And as long as you're doing those two things, I feel like you're good. So let's talk about them, like let's dissect this. So the reasons why I think these two things are like so great is, first of all, well, the first thing is, I forgot what I was saying. I'm going to be cheating a bit. Yes, so the first reason is that if you're doing these things, right, you're having a variety of experiences and you're making the most of your abilities. First thing is that you are going to be riding the full spectrum of waves, right, of human emotions. What that means is that if you try a bunch of things without worrying about having a tangible reward to show for each of them, without worrying about what other people are going to say, what's going to happen is that you will give your all to something, whatever your art form is. You're doing photography, you're doing film, you're doing writing, whatever. You're going to be giving your all to it. And the thing is, you will come up with doubts, you will have doubts, you will doubt yourself, you will not feel good about your art, you will compare yourself to other people who've been doing this way longer than you have, other people who have other benefits that you don't have. You're going to be doing it anyway, which means that you will be riding the whole spectrum of human emotions of like, regret, like why didn't I do this sooner, or disappointment, like my art is not good enough, or jealousy, like jealous of other people's achievements. And all of this is a good thing, because I think that we are put on this earth to my answer to Cronshaw's question, which is to Philip's question, which is like, why are we here then? For now, my answer, this may change as I like grow, but I think for now it's to write truly, to like do a bunch of things, and therefore write the whole spectrum of human emotions. And so as long as you're having enough experiences, you will automatically be feeling the full spectrum of human emotions. It sounds scary, but it's what anyone needs. It's what everyone needs for growth. And so what that also means by the second part of like giving your best, making the best of your abilities, it doesn't mean that you have to do and give your all and be the best at everything you do, because some things are just not cut out for you. So for instance, I was a drummer, I was really into music, and then I tried my hand at keys. I did not do well at any of them. Then I came to writing, and I truly did not give my best to drumming nor to the keys, because I couldn't, because that's not what was for me, or at least in this phase of my life, it's not what's meant for me. But right now and for the rest of my life, right now I feel like writing is what is there for me, what's meant for me for the rest of my life. And so it can take a few trials and failures to arrive at the thing that you want to give your best to, but then you do have to make the most of your abilities there. And again, I feel like these are very strict terms of like making the best of your abilities, but it differs from person to person what that's going to look like. So for instance, drums was not introduced in my life at a point where I feel like I could have been good at it, but I do feel like a few years from now, or maybe a decade from now, maybe I'll try my hand at it again. And I know that at that point I'll be in a place where I want to give it my all and like truly put in that effort for it. But right now I feel like writing is what's for me. That's the first reason, which is writing the whole spectrum of human emotions. And then the second reason why I think this quote of like having a variety of experiences and sort of giving it your all is important. So the second reason is because you will be making use of like your mental faculties, which is so important, right? Because we get so used to like working the whole day, and then you're tired of working the whole day, so you pass out at night, you wake up early, maybe get in some exercise, go back to work, come back, and it's the same routine. But you need to have something that is so for you, something that is an outlet for you, a release for you, where you can, when the emotions of the other areas of life get too much, you can give your all in this one passion, whether it's again photography, film, writing, whatever, dance. That is something that everyone should have for themselves, whether you call yourself an artist or a creative or not. That's the second reason. The third reason is that as artists, we tend to go inside ourselves and retreat within ourselves, especially if like, it's a solitary form of art. As a musician or a dancer, you are still performing with other people and you're practicing with other people. But for something like, let's say, painting or writing, it's something one usually does on their own. And so you can sort of, it's very easy to lose yourself in that way. But I think that when you have a variety of experiences, what that means is like maybe you join a course, or you join a book club, or you join a writing club, or you having a variety of experiences doesn't have to mean traveling around the world. It could also be opening yourself up to different types of people, to different forms of art that you hadn't considered before, trying your hand at different things and having conversations with different types of people. So anything that involves people is going to be great for you, because it could also be something like, let's say you finish a piece of work and you show it to people, and you receive different types of feedback, and so those different opinions, some of which could be negative, would lead to growth, because it's just a good way of building resilience when you are thrust into environments with different people. So that's the third reason. And the fourth reason, which is the most important, which is what Philip does so well in this book, which is that you develop your own personal philosophies. So right now, Philip has had this question with Cronshaw of like, what is the meaning of life and everything. And so you see at multiple stages throughout this book, he keeps coming back to that question, and he keeps answering it in different ways according to the experiences he's having at that time in the book and the people he's meeting at that time in the book. And it's the same with us, because we're so quick to form opinions and make opinions and be very rigid, when in fact there's so much of life left, and we're so young, and there's so much that's left to happen to us. So the fourth reason for having a variety of experiences and making the best of your abilities is so that you can keep revising and you can keep reinventing your own personal philosophies, your own thoughts, your own opinions. And my friend calls this belief breakers. So I think that is also great, because the first time I heard him talk about this term, he said like, okay, this is what I think, and he was talking to me about something in his life, and he said that this is what I believe, and he was so sure on it, and I tried to change his opinion a bunch of times, and it didn't work because he was so set in that, and he said that I can't, and then he ended that conversation with saying, I can't wait for this belief to be broken. And so I was like, so you do believe that it will be broken? And I just think it's a very good mindset to have when you're not closed and when you're not rigid, and you could believe in something because it's been proven by all of your experiences in your past and your present, but you're keeping the future open of like, this could change at some point. So I think that's beautiful. And so we're getting close to the end. So last couple of things I wanted to talk about in terms of like, what does this mean, right? So coming back to the question that Philip had, like with Cronshaw, where Philip said like, okay, but if you take away goodness and beauty and truth and all of that, then why are we alive? What is the point? And in terms of art, again, we feel that way of like, okay, if I'm not making good art, what's the point of making art? Or if I've made a good piece of work, people are not liking it, what's the point of making it? Or if I've made a good piece of work and I feel really good, and then that feeling goes away, what's the point of going on? So I think the solution to all of this is the following. Yet another quote by, oh god, what's the name? Give me 1 second. Notes to Myself by Hugh Prather. Okay, it's there. But basically, it's this book called Notes to Myself. The author is Hugh Prather, where it's literally just notes. Each page has like a quote that this guy has reflected on in his life, and so each page has something like a note or a quote or something that you can actually journal about and make your own notes about and see what you feel about that. It's a great book. So it's a quote from there that I wanted to say. To live my life for the outcome is to sentence myself to continuous frustration. My only sure reward is in my actions, not from them. The quality of my reward is in the depth of my response, the centralness of the part of me that I act from. So yeah, essentially what that means is just not living for the outcome, not living for the reward, because like we've discussed in this past half an hour or so, is that, god, I look so pretty like this, sorry, it's never going to feel as good as you have built it up in your head. So then you might as well, rather than expecting of like, while I'm writing, oh, I hope this is a great book someday, but just writing for the moment, for that connection that you have between your words and your pen and yourself and your thoughts and your emotions. Write for that, and then whatever happens afterwards, you can still look forward to like writing a really successful book and winning all these awards or like whatever it is. You will look forward to that. You can't cut off that part of yourself that hopes and yearns and dreams. That's a good thing, but it's just good to be as present and as in the moment as you can, because then even the writing or the action or the filming or the photography or whatever that comes out of you, it's going to be at its purest, most richest form when you are so connected to that part inside you, and it's coming from inside and it's not from the potential possible reward. And then I want to read out a few other quotes, which is great for artists, I feel. So these two quotes are by Bill Evans and Rilke. Okay, so Bill Evans says, people tend to approximate the product rather than attacking it in a true realistic way at any elementary level, regardless of how elementary, but it must be entirely real and entirely accurate. Take a small part and be real and true about it. To approximate the whole thing in a vague way gives you a feeling that you have more or less touched the thing, but it just leads to confusion and you'll never find your way out. So this is so good because, again, with artists, we're thinking too much of outside the book or outside the film, or like how it will be received, what people will think, what people will say. Or even if we don't go there, we think too much in terms of like the whole project that we're working on versus like just what we're doing right now. So again, it all comes back to like being intentional, being in the moment. So I'll tell you, for instance, and again, I could change my mind about this, but I don't want to plot, at least my first novel, the one that I'm gonna be working on now, I don't want to plot it because a number of people could disagree with this, but for very valid reasons. But I feel like that's not me right now. That's not something I want to do. I don't want to cage and restrict, and I don't want to give a structure, a confinement right now, but I just want to focus on the piece that I'm working on right now. The one scene that I'm writing. I think that it will come from its purest part if I'm not focused about how it fits into the larger picture of my whole novel. And there's so many things that could go wrong with this type of thinking also. And there's a reason why people script and plot and all of that. And like I said, I could change my mind about this, but right now I feel like where I'm at is that I want to give so much value and respect to the one scene that I'm on, the one thing that I'm thinking about that's in my mind. I want it to come out so great that like I want to respect its potential so much that it could grow into anything, which I just don't think will happen if I'm worried about like the whole book and all the chapters and all the scenes and how this fits into the larger framework and what the next character will say and like how will this scene be responded to. And like I think it's just about being in the moment is what I'm getting from this quote. And let me know what you guys think about these quotes also, by the way. But I think that it's just great because it's so true. Like we all are so worried about the next step and the bigger picture that we don't give our all and attack it in a true and real way, the path that we're currently working on. The next quote is by Rilke. Do not be distracted by surfaces. It is in the depths that all laws obtain. Go into yourself. This is from his Letters to a Young Poet. Again, completely agree with it. And when I read this quote in that book, Letters to a Young Poet, is when I stopped worrying so much about, what this scene will lead to and what's the next scene and what's the next step and how does all of this fit in a framework. And I stopped worrying about writing, I think, when I read that, when I realized how much richer and truer my result can be, the writing can be, when it's coming from a place inside myself versus like metaphors and descriptions and similes and poetic devices and just technical descriptions of what's happening, what's going on. Because all of that can exist, and I feel like craft has obviously a very important role. But if it's not rooted to, but craft has a very important role, but if your art itself, if what you're writing itself is not rooted, it's not grounded in emotions, it's not, it doesn't have like human emotions at its core, then you can dress it up however you want to, but it's still going to be empty. A very good example of this is, so Greek Lessons is this book by Kang, the Nobel Prize winner. She won the Nobel Prize, right? Let me just fact check that real quick before I say something on the internet like this. But Greek Lessons by Kang, right? Very interesting in terms of craft. Okay, the way that she's written the book is amazing. Yes, 2024 Nobel Prize in Literature. In Greek Lessons, she did something which was so beautiful, and the craft was kind of like, she's not letting you in to the characters, and you're just like on the outside looking in, and you're trying so hard to look in, and it's so painful what's inside those words. But it's very short prose, and it's very like small sections, and before like it interweaves between these two narrators, these two main protagonists, and they're like very short sections of writing, and it's very small sentences, and it's very structured. No one's saying anything, and no one's even showing. Like, it's not a show don't tell thing happening. There's no showing, there's no telling going on there, but you can just feel that it's so rooted and it's so painful, and it's a beautiful book. On the other hand, recently I read Transit by Rachel Cusk, and it just doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't read authentic. There are no risks being taken here. Okay, in craft there are, but there are no risks being taken here in terms of the actual content, in terms of the art. There were no feelings almost. It was so bland and raw, like uncooked. There was no flavor, and obviously the author was going for this impersonal narrator. It's one of those whole white authors doing autofiction thing, and that's okay, but it's like, it was just, you can tell when an author has really gone inside themselves and what has come out as a result, no matter how it has been crafted, no matter what the style of writing is or what the craft is. But it's the writing is something that has been understood by the author. Those are feelings that have been sat on and reflected on and carefully considered versus like intellectually considered. You know what I mean? It wasn't bland intellectual observations. But anyway, maybe that's a wild comparison to draw, but all I'm trying to say is that go inside yourself, because that's where the best art comes from versus outward writing. Like training your eye on subjects outside of you can only be done well enough if you are going inside yourself and reflecting on those things enough, is my thinking. The next quote I want to read to you is also by Rilke. Allow your verdicts their own quiet, untroubled development, which, like all progress, must come from deep within and cannot be forced or accelerated. Be patient towards all that is unresolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves like locked rooms. Do not strive to uncover answers, they cannot be given you because you have not been able to live them. Live the questions for now. So, again, the next part of this is like why I'm reading this quote out is because no matter how much I say like you should go inside yourself and like you should write from the truest part of yourself or make art from the truest part of yourself, it's important to also not get obsessive about the result and to just let things go and accept that this is where your current level is. This is as good as the art is going to be right now, and so just let it go, ship it, and then get back to practicing. And so the get back to practicing part is very well said here in this last quote by Stephen Jay Gould, which is conscious application of raw talent, far more than luck or accident, is at the core of every creative moment. The cultivation of aptitude, more than coincidence or inspiration, is what's responsible for most creative breakthroughs. So, yeah, get practicing. Don't be obsessive about the result. Let it go. Like, don't be perfectionistic. Let it go, whatever comes out. But try with that conscious, raw application to go inside yourself and write from that place or make art from that place. And as Philip says, have a variety of experiences, and at least a couple of them, make the best of your abilities that you can. Make it the best you can. Alright, this was really fun. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I hope you're having a great day, night, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye.